One of the biggest hurdles when it comes to building in Conan Exiles is stability. It requires a lot of time and effort to study and learn it on your own, so today I'll be teaching you all you need to know to keep your buildings safe, secure and intact. So without further ado, let's get started. First things first, what exactly is stability? It's a measure of how much support your building has. Without support you won't be able to place a building piece, and if part of your build loses stability it will collapse. For example, if you have a floating strip of 4 ceilings and then you remove the second ceiling, everything afterwards that relies on its stability will collapse when it's removed. Stability is measured between a value of 0, no stability, and 100, maximum stability. You can check the stability of any piece at any time in game using a repair hammer. Each building piece has a stability cost. So for example, one ceiling takes 20 stability. So from a foundation that provides 100 stability, you'd be able to build out 4 tiles which goes down in increments of 20. 80, 60, 40, 20, and then there isn't enough stability left to place a 5th tile without that piece having 0 stability, thus that is the limit. Stability is only in effect when you build on a horizontal or diagonal plane. If you build vertically with walls, pillars, etc., you will not incur a stability loss. It's also important to know that pieces can only take stability from their sockets. The socket is basically the point that snaps to other pieces. The perfect example for this is stairs. They have a socket at the top and the bottom so they can give or take stability from either of those points, but they can't take or give stability on the sides. This is pretty self-explanatory. I think most would have already guessed this is the case, but it is worth mentioning. I did mention a stability limit there. There are ways to get around basically every stability limit, but for now, knowing how stability works is important. It is essentially your structural support mechanic, and if a piece doesn't have support, it won't be able to remain or be placed in the world. So now that we know the basics of how the stability mechanic works, let's get into the actual numbers of the stability costs. Most building pieces incur a stability cost. This is, as mentioned earlier, a value that subtracts from the initial source of stability and determines the stability value of that current piece. Example, if a ceiling costs 20 and you attach it to a source of stability, it is drawing that 20 stability from the source and therefore the ceiling has 80 stability. Of course the values are different between different building pieces, so I'll break them down for you now. Wedge ceilings cost 14 stability each and can be built out to a maximum of 7 tiles unsupported. Square ceilings and hatch frames cost 20 and can be built out 4 tiles unsupported. Bridges from the debaucheries of Decketo DLC also behave like ceilings too. Each tile a bridge goes out costs 20 stability. Stairs cost 25 and can be built out 3 tiles. Straight roofs cost 20 and can be built out 4 tiles, and the same is true for ramps, 20 stability each and 4 tiles out. Ramp corners cost 25 stability. Roof wedge pieces cost 20, that's for both the regular and the inverted wedges. Inverted roof corner pieces cost 25. Regular roof corner pieces cost 25 also. All rooftop pieces cost 20. Unsupported awnings also cost 20 stability. And then finally, inverted sloping sides hung from a source of 100 stability cost 20 stability each. Furthermore, there are many items that do not have an intrinsic stability cost, but will display a stability value regardless. Because stability can only be lost when moving horizontally or diagonally away from a source of stability, anything that goes vertically will not incur a stability cost. This goes for walls, windows, door frames, gate frames, wall caps, and even the stable fence gate frames from the Riders of Hyboria DLC. However, if you place a wall on a tile that has incurred a stability loss, for example placing a wall on the outer edge of a ceiling with 80 stability, it will reflect the stability of the piece it is placed on. Regular sloping sides are the only anomaly here. They do incur a 20 stability cost, but because they travel vertically and 99% of the time they're going to be supported by a wall, that will basically never affect the build, especially because when you're building a roof you would almost never take stability from the sloping side but instead from the nearby wall or ceiling. Finally, there are the stability sources. When these pieces are connected to the ground, they will provide 100 stability. This goes for foundations, fence foundations and pillars. It's worth noting too that pillars will grant 100 stability to a ceiling placed on top of them, as though there is a big overhang, it is still on the same tile and not horizontally or diagonally away from it, so therefore the ceiling will have 100 stability. So now that we know the raw values and how each piece functions, let's put it into practice and learn how best to work with stability. Now, building with stability in mind is one of the biggest pitfalls of early building. It can be very tempting to build by numbers and consider only the stability, but that can lead to some quite boring designs, and building with no consideration of stability will result in you trying to build something that you likely can't achieve. So in that case, what's the best practice? Well, firstly, always start off a build with a base plate that has 100 stability across the board. You can do this with foundations or ceilings on pillars, either will work. You also want to keep the limit points of different pieces in mind. Sure, you can build a 20 by 20 square of foundations, but you won't be able to build the ceilings of the first floor without using a lot of pillars to support it. Instead, keep things simple. Do bear in mind the limits of your stability, and rather than trying to build one enormous open plan base, build something consisting of smaller rooms all joined together that have no stability issues, broken up by walls. The walls will pass stability upward and spread the support out, and everything should work a lot smoother. That being said, if you do find yourself caught out and lacking stability in a critical area, whilst it might not be the most elegant solution, sometimes you gotta bite the bullet and place a pillar or two. When you're still learning, you've sometimes got to compromise on looks to make sure things work, and honestly, there's nothing too wrong with that. Getting yourself into those situations is also a really good learning experience. You kind of have to make that mistake a couple of times before you end up rectifying it in the future. Also, you don't need a repair hammer to keep an eye on stability. As you've probably already seen, the building process is colour coded, and that is your stability meter. Green is 100 and it will slowly go down from green to red, and of course red will be the final block that can be placed. It can be a little inconsistent at times, but it's usually a very reliable way to check stability and to know when you need more support. Finally, I mentioned earlier that you can break or bypass most of these stability limits, so let's touch on that briefly. It's easy to think at first that these stability limits are hard stops. Really, they're more obstacles that you can tackle. As I mentioned earlier, you can pass extra support up to ceilings above with walls, but also you can simply just manipulate the stability system to achieve the results you want. Let's take the example of ceilings that I've used throughout this video. 4 tile limit from a source of 100 stability, so the maximum length with a source at either end is 6 tiles, right? Not necessarily, it can actually be up to 10. Take that 4 tile stretch, flip it around and add it to the other end. The tiles in the middle are not technically connected, as they're not using each other's stability, but because it's got just enough stability to stay there, it will remain in place, and you have a functional, unsupported 8 tile gap, even though the limit has not been changed. That same principle of extending the stability limits can be used with any of the ceiling pieces, wedges included. The same of course also works for vaulted ceilings too. They have the exact same stability properties as regular ceilings. I think ultimately though the most useful thing is that tip I gave you earlier. Use walls inside your build to build out rooms. Not only does it make the interior more interesting, but because your base plate will have 100 stability across the board, there's more points where the walls can pass that 100 stability up to the floor above. Additionally, for a pure mechanical increase, the tier 20 expertise perk Structural Integrity makes your structures 25% more stable. An example of this at play is that with this perk, ceilings now only cost 15 stability rather than 20. That's a small change, but that moves the stability limit from 4 tiles to 6, or 12 with the trick I showed you earlier. This perk stays in effect even if you respec your stats, and you'll only ever run into issues if the piece is deleted and you have to rebuild it. I have a whole video about that perk already uploaded, do click the card in the top right to check that out. Finally, whilst I would not recommend it for beginners as it's not quite the most conducive method to learning, no stability loss is also an option. If you're in single player or playing on a server where you have admin permissions, you can simply disable the stability loss mechanic through the admin panel. As long as you have at least one stability source, you can then build to your heart's content with no worries at all. Ultimately, the stability mechanic can easily be one of Conan's biggest struggles at first. Building has many aesthetic challenges, but this is one of its few mechanical hurdles that you basically have to overcome unless you want to build 4x4 huts forever. Learning how stability works is integral to becoming a better builder. Like almost anything when it comes to building in Conan, or, well, any other task in general, practice makes perfect. Build, build and build, analyse your mistakes and make mental notes of what worked well and what didn't, and your journey to becoming a better builder will be marching on nicely. And there we have it, everything you need to know about Conan's stability mechanic. I've been wanting to tackle this topic for a long time, and hopefully this video has explained it well, done this sometimes complicated mechanic justice, and most importantly of all, helped you improve as a builder. If you are looking to improve your own builds, I've got hundreds of build videos already uploaded, alongside tips and tricks, guides and more to help you out, so feel free to take a look and learn some more. Thank you for watching, and of course a massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. Make sure you subscribe for more Conan guides, builds, news, reviews, lore videos and more. Take care, and I'll see you soon.